again. I think I'm called Classic ASMR, not quite sure. And I've got another book for you. I must also thank you very much for everybody. It was only 2 or 3 of you, but I really appreciated that my last little video, which was the complete works of Shakespeare, and I said that we were trying to raise some funds for the theatre company that we set up, Mavericks, not-for-profit registered charity. And if we can get 1,000 people, followers, apparently then we can share some revenue from ads, which all sounds jolly good. I didn't know if it's possible because at the moment I think we've got about 30 followers. So if you are watching this, then please do follow. And I think you have to press the button for subscribe or like or whatever. You know better than I do, I'm quite sure. So if you could, that would be lovely. So I'm a writer and obviously running a theatre company, which is a little bit difficult in any climate, certainly at the moment. But I also I run a kind of a tourist thing in London called the London Literary Pub Crawler. I wrote it. And as I speak, my version of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol is about to open off-Broadway in New York, which is very exciting. I'm in London. I sadly can't afford the fare to go over and see it, but if it goes well, hopefully, things will pick up. But I was in London walking down Charing Cross Road, and I went into a bookshop. I've actually got the receipt here. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to show you this. Let me see, does it say anything? I don't think there's anything sort of personal on here. Anyway, it's Henry Purd. It's Henry Purd's bookshop. 72 Charing Cross Road, and I really shouldn't have gone in. I went in to look for another book on writing, and yet another book, which I won't bore you about now, but I literally, this little fella caught my eye. It's coming up to December here. I don't know what time you're watching this. It doesn't really matter, does it? That's the glory of YouTube and the internet, and ASMR, of course. And the fact that I'd written a version of A Christmas Carol that was going to the United States of America. Let's move that out of the way, by the way. It's a little calling fan. And then I came across this, and I thought, oh no. So let me just see if I can move this out of the way and show you this, because it's a gorgeous little thing. And it cost me quite a lot of money, but I shall share the loss. Look at it. It was 65 quid. There was actually one there, a slightly smaller version, for 130, but I really couldn't do that. But the glory of this is booked from the 1800s, you'll see in a moment when we get there. I actually know an antiquarian bookseller in Mayfair, and he says, don't forget, we never own these books. We just look after them until the next people come along and buy them. But it's a lovely book, look at this. So here's the first little, The 7 Travellers. These are his short stories, as it says here, as you're about to see in a minute. I love the fact they've got little tissue as well. Here we go. Christmas Stories from Household Words and All the Year Round by Charles Dickens, with illustrations. We've just seen one. Printed in London by Chapman and Hall at 193 Piccadilly. I think this was the days before postcodes and zip codes. In 1876. So this book was published in 1876. And of course, Charles Dickens was a journalist, wasn't he? Yes, he was. So these are his stories from his magazines, and I thought what I might try and do. Again, I'm very new to this thing. I'm just filming this on my phone. Excuse me, with a little microphone we've got. But I thought I might have a little look and see if we could go through one of these stories. And the point being that I often use ASMR. Who hasn't heard of John Butler? ASMR to go to sleep. Even more dramatic, I suppose. It was just before COVID, and when COVID struck in 2020, was it? Yeah. It was a great comfort and helped me relax when I contracted the disease quite early on. I was an early adapter. Yeah, I think you tech guys would appreciate that. Any tech guys listening? So let's have a look at this. Anyway, London, printed by Virtue & Co. I think that says Virtue & Co. Limited, City Road. And City Road still there today. And you can see the list of contents, all the short stories that are here. So, the 7 Pool Travellers, we've already seen an illustration. The Holly Tales. The Wreck of the Golden Mary. Ooh. I can't read that from here with my right. What's it say? The period or certain of certain English persons. I won't go through them all now. Well, actually, we could, couldn't we? Yeah. Got the whole point of ASMR, isn't it? We don't need to rush anything. So, I will carry on then. Going into society. The Haunted House. Ooh. A Message from the Sea. Tom Trober's, was that Tom Tiddler's Ground? I can hardly read these. I need to get some glasses, don't I? Shall I get? I've got some glasses over there. Yeah, no, don't worry. No stress. Just relax. I'll be there. Somebody's language. I love some of Charles Dickens's names. Was it the Miss Turveydrop Academy of Dance, which is from his novel Bleak House. Miss Turveydrop. Another character in that is Mr. Jellyby. Fantastic. So these are his stories anyway. And there's another one here. Mrs. Liefield's London. I won't go through them all now. Actually, I won't. So I want to get into the meaty stuff. And then again, list of illustrations. And this page has come out, which is a shame. But a list of illustrations. The 7 Pool Travellers, which we've already seen as a frontispiece. The Holly Tree. The Wreck of the Golden Mary. The Perils of Certain English Prisoners. Going into Society. Oh, I say that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? The Haunted House. The Tiddler's Ground. Someone's Luggage. Well, this was before airports, so it won't be left with lost luggage, will it? Mrs. Libripper. As you can see, I haven't practiced this. I haven't looked at this before. It's the first time we're seeing it together for the first time. I also, with ASMR, quite like it when I don't have to watch the screen. So if you're watching the screen, you don't need to. You can just lie back, close your eyes, and maybe drift off. What have we got here? Another one, Dr. Marigold. I shan't make any comments about gloves. The Signal Man. That's quite a famous short story, which we'll get to, definitely. Mugby Junction. And No Thoroughfare. So a list of illustrations from this book from, what did I say, 1878? 1870s. And it belongs here. Then this is story 1. The 7 Poor Travellers, written in 1854. In 3 chapters. I'll do at least the first chapter, I think. I'm never quite sure how long these videos are supposed to last, so perhaps you can let me know in the notes. In the comments, I should say, in the notes. Okay, the 7 Poor Travellers in 3 chapters. And again, I've not read these, so we're discovering them together. Chapter 1, in the old city of Rochester. Strictly speaking, there were only 6 poor travellers, but being a traveller myself, though an idle one, and being withal as poor as I hope to be, I brought the number up to 7. This word of explanation is due at once. For what says the inscription over the quaint old door? Richard Watts, Esquire, by his will dated 22nd of August, 1579, founded this charity for 6 poor travellers who, not being rogue or proctors, may receive gratis for 1 night lodging, entertainment, and 4p each. Wow. It was the ancient little city of Rochester, in Kent, of all the good days in the year, upon a Christmas Eve, that I stood reading this inscription over the quaint old door in question. I had been wondering about the neighbouring cathedral, and had seen the tomb of Richard Watts with the effigy of worthy master Richard staring out of it like a ship's figurehead, and I had felt that I could do no less, as I gave the verger his fee, than inquire the way to Watts' charity. The way being very short and very plain, I had come prosperously to the inscription and the quaint old door. Now, I said to myself as I looked at the knocker, I know I am not a proctor. I wonder whether I am a rogue. Upon the whole, though conscience reproduced 2 or 3 pretty faces which might have had smaller attraction for a mortal Goliath than they had for me, who am but a Tom Thumb in that way, I came to the conclusion that I was not a rogue. So, beginning to regard the establishment as in some sort my property, bequeathed to me, and divers collegiates, share and share alike, by the worshipful master Richard Watts, I stepped backwards into the road to survey my inheritance. I found it to be a clean white house of a staid and venerable air, with the quaint old door already 3 times mentioned, an arched door, choice little low lattice windows, and a roof of 3 gables. The silent high street of Rochester is full of gables, with old beams and timbers carved into strange faces. It is oddly garnished with a queer old clock that projects over the pavement out of a grave little red building, as if Time carried on business there and hung out his sign. Sooth to say, he did an active stroke of work in Rochester, in the old days of the Romans, and the Saxons and the Normans, and down to the times of King John, when the rugged castle, I will not undertake to say how many hundreds of years old then, was abandoned to the centuries of weather, which have so defaced the dark apertures in its walls, that the ruin looks as if the rooks and daws had picked its eyes out. I was very well pleased, both with my property and its situation. While I was yet surveying it with growing content, I espied, at one of the upper lattices which stood open, a decent body of a wholesome matronly appearance, whose eyes I caught inquiringly addressed to mine. They said so plainly, "Do you wish to see the house?" that I answered aloud, "Yes, if you please." And within a minute the old door opened, and I bent my head and went down the 2 steps into the entry. "This," said the matronly presence, ushering me into a low room on the right, "is where the travellers sit by the fire, and cook what bits of suppers they buy with their 4p." "Oh, they have no entertainment?" said I, for the inscription over the outer door was still running in my head, and I was mentally repeating it in a kind of tune: lodgings, entertainment, and 4p each. "They have a fire provided for 'em," returned the matron, a mighty civil person, not, as I could make out, overpaid, "and these cooking utensils. This, what's painted on a board, is the rules for their behaviour. They have their 4p when they get their tickets from the steward over the way, for I don't admit 'em myself. They must get their tickets first, and sometimes one buys a rasher of bacon, and another a herring, and another a pound of potatoes or what not. Sometimes 2 or 3 of them will club their 14 pences, their fourpences together, and make a supper that way. But not much of anything is to be got for fourpence at present, when provisions is so dear. True indeed, I remarked. I'd been looking about the room, admiring its snug fireside at the upper end, its glimpse of the street through the low mullioned window, and its beams overhead. It is very comfortable, said I. Ill-convenient, observed the matronly presence. I liked to hear her say so, for it showed a commendable anxiety to execute in no niggardly spirit the intentions of the Master Richard Watts. But the room was really so well adapted to its purpose that I protested quite enthusiastically against her disparagement. Nay, ma'am, said I am sure it is warm in winter and cool in summer. It has a look of homely welcome and soothing rest. It has a remarkably cosy fireside, the very blink of which, gleaming out into the street upon a winter night, has been heard in that hard, declaring my ability to make hot wassail. I've gone over 2 pages, obviously. Let me pause here. Nay, madam, said I am sure it is warm in winter and cool in summer. It has the look of a homely welcome and soothing rest. It has a remarkably cosy fireside, the very blink of which, gleaming out into the street upon a winter night, is enough to warm all Rochester's heart. And as to the convenience of the 6 poor travellers, I don't mean them, returned the presence. I speak of its being an ill convenience to myself and my daughter, having no other room to sit in overnight. This was true enough, but there was another quaint room of corresponding dimensions on the opposite side of the entry. So I stepped across to it through the open doors of both rooms and asked what this chamber was for. This, returned the presence, is the boardroom, where the gentlemen meet when they come here. Let me see. I had counted from the street 6 upper windows, besides those on the ground story. Making a perplexed calculation in my mind, I rejoined, then the 6 poor travellers sleep upstairs? My new friend shook her head. They sleep, she answered, in 2 little outer galleries at the back, where their beds has always been, ever since the charity was founded. It being so very ill-convenient to me, as things is at present, the gentlemen are going to take off a bit of the backyard and make a slip of a room from there to sit in before they go to bed. Then the 6 poor travellers, said I, will be entirely out of house. Entirely out of the house, assented the presence, comfortingly smoothing her hands, which is considered much better for all parties, and much more convenient. I had been a little startled in the cathedral by the emphasis with which the effigy of Master Richard Watts was bursting out of his tomb, but I began to think now that it might be expected to come across the high street some stormy night and make a disturbance here. Albeit, I kept my thoughts to myself and accompanied the presence to the little galleries at the back. I found them on a tiny scale, like the galleries in old inn yards. They were very clean. While I was looking at them, the matron gave me to understand that the prescribed number of poor travellers were forthcoming every night from year's end to year's end, and that the beds were always occupied. My question upon this and her replies brought us back to the boardroom so essential to the dignity of the gentleman, where she showed me the printed accounts of the charity hanging up by the window. From then, I gathered that the greater part of the property bequeathed by the worshipful Mayor Richard Watts for the maintenance of this foundation was, at the period of his death, mere marshland, but that in course of time it had been reclaimed and built upon, and was very considerably increased in value. I found, too, that about a 30th part of the annual revenue that now expended on the purpose is commemorated in the inscription over the door, the rest being handsomely laid out in chancery, law expenses, collectorship, receivership, poundage, and other appendages of management, highly complimentary to the importance of the 6 poor travellers. In short, I made the not entirely new discovery that it may be said of an establishment like this in dear old England, as of the fat oyster in the American story, that it takes a good many men to swallow it whole. And pray, ma'am, I said, sensible that the blankness of my face began to brighten as a thought occurred to me. Could one see these travellers? Well, she returned dubiously. No. Not tonight, for instance, said I. Oh, well, she returned more positively. No. Nobody ever asked to see them, and nobody ever did see them. As I am not easily balked in a design set when I am upon it, I urged the good ladies that this was Christmas Eve. The Christmas comes but once a year, which is happily too true. For when it begins to stay with us for the whole year round, we shall make this earth a very different place. That I was possessed by the desire to treat the travellers to a supper and a temperate glass of hot wassail, I should say, and the voice of fame had been heard in that land, declaring my ability to make hot wassail, that if I were permitted to hold the feast, I should be found comfortable to reason, sobriety, and good hours. In a word, that I could be merry and wise myself, and had been even known at a pinch to keep others so, although I was decorated with no badge or medal, and was not a brother, orator, apostle, saint, or prophet, or of any denomination whatever. In the end, I prevailed to my great joy. It was settled that at 9 o'clock that night a turkey and a piece of roast beef should smoke upon the board, and that I, faint and unworthy minister for one of Master Richard Watts, should preside as the Christmas supper host of the 6 poor travellers. And I'm going to pause there just to see how this works, but we shall return because he goes to his inn. And I quite like the fact that this is set on a Christmas Eve as well. As I've just mentioned at the start, I've never seen this before. I just bought it from a bookshop on stupid impulse, £65. That's quite a lot of money, but it is an 1870-something, 76, I think. It is Charles Dickens, who, of course, is something of a master. And as a writer myself, I know as you're a writer, we all kind of take great interest in how other writers write. Procrastination is the enemy of genius, I think. I'm sure someone said that, if not, I just have. So we shall return to Charles's story. But thank you so much for watching. If you've watched this far, thank you for your advice as well in the comments. As I say, we're doing this for a theatre company. So support the arts, as they say. And if you've got any comments, then please do feel free to leave them in the comments section. That's down below, isn't it? And as I mentioned, if you quite like this, you don't have to love it, then please do subscribe. I think we've got about 30 odd subscribers at the moment. If we can get to 1,000, it means, as I mentioned at the start, we might be able to share some of the revenue from YouTube to help our theatre company productions. I've got 1 or 2 plans which I won't share with you now, but I might do later. And thank you very much. I think half an hour is about right, but I'm never sure. I know occasionally I drift off, usually in half an hour. So if you have stuck this far, then on one hand I failed, because I'm hoping you might be asleep by now. But if not, I hope you're relaxed. And thank you very much for sticking with us, me and Charles. And I shall return for part 2 next week, if not before. So as I say, please do like us if you do. No, subscribe, that's it. Oh, and like, yes. You can press the little bell button, apparently. But as I mentioned at the start, you obviously will know more about this than I. But thank you very much for your company. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.